bro.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome, and thank you so much for coming here. We got an amazing brother who's been doing so much in our space, and we stand on his shoulders in many ways, and the ancestors are definitely showing him favor. Our amazing brother, good brother, Brother Arthur Hayes. Welcome to the Black Blockchain Summit.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And just so that we can have a great conversation, we also have our co-founder extraordinaire and dynamic leader who's carried me most of the way, technically, probably a lot of the ways too. Good brother John Karanja Wanaina for being a fireside chatter. Thank you so much, good brother John.
Asante sana Sinclair, and karibu sana to Arthur Hayes to the Black Blockchain Summit.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get to like the background. You know what they say, a lot of times people don't care what you know until they know you care. One of the ways we do that is kind of, let's get that background story, you know, that born on a farm somewhere or in an urban city somewhere. Like, I know we just want to keep it 100. Give us the best story you got. We'll put a little rap beat to it. I'm joking. I apologize for all the jokes. You're like, look, man, I'm here for a serious conversation about crypto. Brother, please take it's your stage.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, everyone. Very simply, was born in Buffalo, New York. Both my parents worked in the auto industry. Spent a bit of time in Buffalo, then moved to Detroit. Moved back to Buffalo for high school. Graduated high school, and then went off to Philadelphia to University of Pennsylvania. And been interested in business my whole life, and so I went to the undergraduate Wharton School there. I had an amazing time. The highlight of my 4 years was not in Philadelphia. It was in Hong Kong. I forgot why, but back when I was a senior in high school, I read a book about a bunch of traders in Japan. I think it was during the early 2000s. The fund is named Evolution, and I went through this guy and how he was trading the Japanese market as an American, and I thought, wow, this sounds awesome. I want to go somewhere new and leverage my experience and get to where I want to go faster, because the American system is the American system, and it takes how long it takes, right? So I wanted to take a shortcut. So I said, well, Japan, that was 1970s to 1989. There's got to be who's the new kid on the block, and that's China. So I decided when I was a senior in high school, I was going to learn Chinese and go move to China. So I got to.
You said in high school. John, did you hear what he said? He said in high school. He looked around. Like, come on, break that down a little bit. What made you look around like that? Come on, brother. Break that. That was he didn't say, look, I was looking at sports and I was looking at a field. No, bro, you said Japan is passe. I'm on to Hong. Come on, talk about how did you even think? Come on, break it down to us. We got students all over the world. We might even have high school students. So we challenge all the high schools. Like, y'all got to step up your game. Brother Art, he done showed you a path. But go ahead and tell how did that happen?
So it was this 2003, 2004 when I was senior in high school. Obviously I have a much deeper understanding of China. I haven't lived there for my whole adult life now, but very superficial level, back then as a high school student, you say, okay, well, they get submitted China into the World Trade Organization back in 2000, and you have this ascendant society, right? 1-something billion people coming from a super low base, hopefully on a higher trajectory, and they obviously have over the past 30-something years. And, if you've read enough history, you know that, okay, if I want to make my mark on the world, if I want to be super successful, I want to go somewhere where there's nothing and try to be part of the story when it grows. And so I thought, okay, there's, China's a blank slate. Why don't I go, learn this language and, see if I can go move there. So I got to the University of Pennsylvania. I was obviously in the Wharton School, and I decided to take Chinese language. So 5 days a week, I had an hour of Chinese class with a bunch of other students. So after about 2 years of that, then it was time as a junior to decide, okay, where do you want to go study abroad? And unfortunately, I wasn't fluent in Mandarin, so I couldn't go to the immersive program in Shanghai with Wharton. So I decided, okay, well, Hong Kong is English language program. They have a very good business school at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, HKUST. And so I applied for that program, and I went. I flew off to mainland, not to mainland China, to Hong Kong in the fall of 2006. And just to plug, I don't know if this scholarship still exists right now, but I didn't have a lot of money, and so there's this thing called I think it's called the Freeman in Asia or something like that scholarship, and I think it was like $7,000 or $8,000, which is a lot of money for a college student back then. I don't know if that's still the same today with inflation. And all I had to do was write a paper. So I applied for the program, and I got the money, and obviously, I had to submit this report on my time abroad when I finished the 4 months of school there. So I fly off to Hong Kong as a junior. I get there, and I fell in love with the city. I traveled to China, traveled to Thailand, traveled to Singapore on my time abroad. And I decided, okay, I want to move to Hong Kong. And so I had that previous summer, I worked at JP Morgan, another program I'll plug here for, it's called SEO, Sponsorship for Educational Opportunity. I'm sure the program still exists, but they help minority kids get into Wall Street. So they had a program for sophomores, which is usually pretty hard to get a internship as a sophomore going into your junior year because you're not actually graduating. So like, why is the bank paying you a bunch of money to get coffee when you can't actually go work for them the next year? And so it's difficult. But I was able to get into the program, had an internship at JP Morgan, had an offer to come back for the next summer. But I was like, hey, I want to move to Hong Kong. And fortunately, they weren't able to.
Oh, you said, hey, I want to move to. Go ahead. I'm just like, folks are listening to. No, I know you live in this world. Like, you live in the world where folks say this probably, but you're talking to folks who, like, first of all, this brother's like in the middle of college, high school, talking about aspirations of being in Asia, and then now he's on Wall Street. Now everybody, especially in those days, people were going to get the MBA, go to Wall Street. I mean, that was the thing. Now you're like, well, let me just add another layer of intricacy in this. I want to go to Hong Kong. All right, so I just want to, everybody listen, I just want to give y'all more, color commentary. That look, all right, brother, Nine is going to give you all the technical questions, but I'm trying to get the human story, brother. That's why I just want to let you know.
No, we got to make this interesting. I haven't talked about this in many other videos. I'll give you guys an exclusive so people come in and watch this.
Awesome.
So summer internship. I wasn't able to convert my New York offer into Hong Kong offer at JP Morgan. And so, what I did, I guess I cold emailed every single top ranked investment banking internship program. And I got one interview with Deutsche Bank. And back then, it's changed now. The big banks were very focused on university students in the United States and Europe. You didn't have to be fluent in Chinese to come over and work in Asia. So they sent some investment professionals over to my campus to interview people. I interviewed. I got invited back for a super day of interviews in New York, and then I finally got an offer to come work in Hong Kong on the equity derivative sales desk at the time in the summer of 2007. So the next summer, I fly back to Hong Kong, and this is pre-2008. If you follow the markets, Hong Kong Hang Seng Index was at 30,000. Things were blowing up. China is ascending into the world, and Hong Kong is this window where Western capital and Chinese capital can sort of commingle, and it was amazing. A great summer. Had a really good time. Got the offer to come back in 2008 to work on the same desk. I obviously accepted that. And then, I start working in finance in 2008. And the first day I stepped on the trading desk was the Monday morning when Lehman had filed bankruptcy. And so I'm sitting there.
No. We're going to make it a cliffhanger. We were sitting there. But, bro, now, while you're taking this journey, a brother from Buffalo by way of Detroit with family from the automotive. I mean, come on. We get the northern migration black folks took to get better jobs. So I'm picking up what you're putting down without you saying it. But now I'm just trying to figure out the cultural differences, the food, the language, all of these things. How was that? Like, again, I think the subject matter and this being an ambitious person can literally win the day with just the focus. But there's so many other things that are softer but still relevant. How did you deal with all those? I mean, keeping up with your friends, your family. Like, how did you? I mean, was it singleness of mind? Like, how did you go through that transition with those other parts? Because we still got the Lehman Brothers. We got the clip. We all know this is about to get real wild. But tell me about these summers, these people you're meeting. What was that like?
It's a lot of fun. I'd say Asia is a big place. Obviously, 2-3 billion people, and vastly different cultures across that. And if you want the easiest integration city for an American, I would say that's probably Hong Kong and lesser so Singapore back in 2006. And so, of course, there's massive cultural differences. And once you get to know the place, you get a little bit more deeper into that. But it's like being in New York, but you're in China, is essentially what I would say Hong Kong is now. It's not like that when you really get there, but I think it's the easiest place to integrate as somebody who's not Chinese, who's not fluent in the language. And every major, business, finance company who wants to deal in Asia and in North Asia particularly is there. And so you have this like international mix of people from all over the world. And it's a lot of fun because nobody is, except for like the Cantonese people, nobody's at home. And so you have a different sort of connection with people. And what may have seemed strange or somebody you never have hung out with in a very cliquey culture, wherever you're from, nobody has any friends, nobody has any family, and you get really, really close to the people that you meet. So some of my closest friends, we all intern together, roommates, work together on the trading floor, have started businesses together. And yeah, we're all this like cohort of people who arrived in Hong Kong from like 2007 to 2009. And so it's a very,
with
very
a common interest. Yeah, common interest. Even though varied backgrounds, but a common interest, international city. So it was already, I think when you just took that layer off, because I'm still thinking, man, all the way in Hong Kong, like it sounded, you made it seem like it wasn't far away, but bro, it's far away. So literally far away in Hong Kong. And then when you just started breaking down the layers, well, my roommates, the folks I work with, it's an international city. New York's in it. Most people aren't from New York. They come from someplace else to come work here. And then there comes that cohort of people that you're actually working with. I'm just breaking this down, and that was super helpful for those who may not be as as venturous as you. I think sometimes helping with these layers to break it down and say, hey, it's just like going to New York or a city that's international. You're gonna work with the folks you work with, and they're gonna end up probably being the folks you hang out with. Awesome, Lehman Brothers.
Yeah, so I joined the desk, and I don't know shit. I'm sitting there on the desk, and Lehman Brothers had failed the morning before, or not, that Sunday night. It's Asia morning, first market to open. Head of trading is running around the trading floor talking about which banks we could trade with and not trade with. So it was a super interesting experience of like crisis when banks were failing left, right, and center. Like by the end of the week, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch had all taken either a bailout, Goldman Sachs, or got bailed out by some sort of commercial bank. And so in the first week of being there, you see dramatic changes, and it sort of altered the trajectory of what finance was and is today. And I think it was not what we all thought it would be, a year prior, right? The money was different, the job was different, the feeling in and of itself of the industry was different as well. And so, I did my about 5 years, worked for Deutsche Bank for 3 years, worked for Citibank for 2 years. Nothing earth-shattering or exciting, but at the end of the day...
Hold on. John, I hear it coming. I hear the white paper coming. You see how he threw out them dates, 2008. The white paper's coming. Yeah. It's about to get good. All right. Take your time, brother. Take your time. I feel the white paper, though. All right, yes. All right, we set the scene.
Yeah, so I got let go from my job at Citibank in early 2013, or say mid-2013, and I had read an article on Zero Hedge about Bitcoin. I thought it was interesting. And I had been a gold guy in like 2011, and sort of I get the thesis and the ideology, and I just hadn't enough time to like really get into it. And so when I lost my job, I was like, I don't want to do this banking thing anymore. I'm not making the kind of money that I wanted to make, and I have no skills. Like, you really don't have skills as a trader. apart from like high school math.
Arthur, and I keep saying Art. I don't mean it. Do you say Arthur or Art? Which one should I say?
Doesn't matter.
All right, look, humbly, brother. You just said you lost your job. You're away from home. You've been working. We just seen the worst stock crash in 1929. Tell me, like, you just lost your job, bro. You got to make, bro. Like, so many people can relate to losing jobs. Like, I've lost a few. That's why I had to work for myself. So my point is, you lost your job. What did you like? I hear how you like transition, but how did that go? Like, you showed up to the office. They were letting everyone. But how did that go down?
I mean, it was a cost cutting, what was it? Last one in, first one out, just standard, right? There's a certain number of thousands of jobs that I get clicked globally. I was the youngest guy on the desk. I got the boot. You got your 3-month severance and thank you, see you later. But at that point, late 20s, I'm like, yes, could I get another job in banking if I hustle a bit over the next 3 to 6 months? Of course. But I didn't really see a trajectory of something like I wanted to do. And I didn't really see that I was developing any real skills as a exchange traded fund market maker. I couldn't build the tech, right? I didn't have any clients. Of course I can assess risk and all the other things. I can do a bit of high school calculus and understand how to use, VLOOKUP on Excel. And that's literally all I know how to do. Yet I get paid. I didn't think the money was where I thought it was going to be, but objectively speaking, I get overpaid for what I contribute to human society. And so I thought, well, I need to change that. Let's try to learn something new and technology or whatever. And then this Bitcoin thing happened. And I started reading about it, and it was really interesting, and the whole economic theory. And I read a lot of economic history. I thought, well, this is my chance. This is, in my opinion, as big as the Gutenberg Bible, telephony, and the early late 19th and early 20th century, and then obviously mainframe computing and the internet. And here we have this Bitcoin thing. This is something I want to be a part of. And again, it's a new industry starting from, not zero. There was obviously a lot of there by the time I got into it, but let me see what I can do. And that was derivatives. I know derivatives. And I thought, okay, I can try to build my own derivatives platform. And then I went out and found my co-founders because I can't code for shit. Ben Dilo and Sam Reed, and pitched them this idea. Let's build a cryptocurrency derivatives platform. And off we went in early 2014. And sort of, we did really well up into 2018, had some legal issues. It is what it is today. But that's really how I got involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I guess I love the energy, the people, the fact that we're trying to build something new. And we're literally just creating the substrate for a new financial system where we use people's money rather than government money. And so that resonates with me on a philosophical level.
And you hear what he said? He did a little, it wasn't Jesse Jackson, but he said people's money and not the government's money. All right. We see you. We see how you did that in there. All right. Awesome. So, John, I think now is where we got to do the tech stuff. I know folks listening, they say, look, we're not going to hear Sinclair overtalk this brother. Brother Wanina, save this whole session with your questions. All right, now it's about to get. All right, I know you said you was born ready. If you can go to Hong Kong and all these places without a sweat on your brow, but Brother Wanina about to bring that funk. Go ahead, hit him, John.
Yeah, thank you, Sinclair. So Arthur, I think that was a great sort of lead up to the questions that we sort of got, and I have some colleagues in the office, Mr. Nicholas Maura, who is a big fan of your blog, and the last few weeks he's just been talking about Ethereum Merge, so I'm sure we'll get to it along the way. So my first question is, how does money and politics intersect, especially in the global environment we have, with all that's happening around the world? And you just called Bitcoin the people's money. So how is it playing sort of that space as we're moving along into the 21st century?
So, I mean, I think if we take a look at, I think I've said this before in one of my essays, that as human beings, as an animal, or whatever you want to call us, we're not very strong, or not very fast. We're not really dexterous. Our senses aren't really that good compared to other predators out there. Yet we've essentially decimated any other large apex predator on the planet. And that's literally only due to our ability to communicate with each other. We have spoken language, we can write, now we have this internet thing, and we can communicate with each other. And so politics and money, in my view, are the same thing. It's how do we organize the 7 billion or 8 billion of us around the world to accomplish some tasks. And that's why we have a computer, or we have roads, or we can fly in an airplane, and all these, and we have people who do very, very, very specialized things. The three of us, none of us sit on a farm all day and grow our own food, which is what most of us did up until 200 years ago, right? And so that's all down to organization, which is politics, and then money, which is just stored energy and allows us to time travel. We borrow money from tomorrow, we use it today to create something, and hopefully this stuff we created today generates more value than what we borrow from tomorrow. And so I think they're interrelated. And up until now, money is either created by the government because they have that power with military and legal codes, or it's been commodity, which is gold. But the problem with gold is it's really, really, really heavy when you get into a large value. So it's gold is the money, in my view, of the sovereign state that they use to trade amongst each other. But it's not entirely that useful for the people if we want to use something other than a government fiat currency. And so if we want to have a currency that's basically purely based on how much energy can we consume to mine it, proof of work, and then the people deciding that it's worth something, because everything is just, it's all in our minds. The US dollar is an imaginary concept, the same as Bitcoin, the same as gold. And so they're all just viruses that infect our mental construct, and they're powered by the communication methods that we have today. So, we have written technology, the printing press, and it started in the religious context. We have the telegraph in the late 19th century. We have the long distance telephone. We had computers, and now we're taking the computer and internet concept and creating a monetary thing that's purely just what we decide it is. And it's the first time in history that happened. And that's why I think Bitcoin in particular is so powerful, and obviously all the other things that it spawned that have taken its image and done different things with it.
Interesting. So we're seeing Bitcoin as a technology having an impact in terms of in the global financial system, but we also have one component that sort of really being showcased at this time, which is war, and in particular the war in Ukraine. So how do you see affecting the global financial system? How does Bitcoin interplay in such a scenario? And what happens to fiat currencies like the US dollar, the Russian ruble, and the Chinese yuan?
So I think we were in the process in the early stages of a disintermediation of different economic blocks, right? You have US and Western Europe over here, you have Russia and China over here, and then you have a bunch of other people who are kind of like, we don't want anything to do with this shit. And so then the question is, where do you buy your energy, or where do you buy your food from? The United States is special in that it has all the energy it needs and it has all the food it needs, and it's protected by two big oceans. So no one's going to attack it. So it can do whatever the fuck it wants. No one's really, and being self-sufficient. Its main ally, Europe, who essentially is a client state of the US that was recapitalized after they blew themselves up in World War II, doesn't have enough energy, obviously, and we're seeing that right now, but is the front lines in this ideological or physical war between the Eurasian landmass, which is Russia and China. And whether or not it's correct or not, from my studies, and maybe other people will disagree, there's a thinking in sort of, I would say, elite American political circles that you can never allow one country to dominate the Eurasian landmass, otherwise they become immensely powerful. And so the United States at all costs has to keep Russia, China, and probably Iran from being friends. And so Europe is sort of the buffer state in that, and that's why the U.S. pumps so much money into it. And so the Ukraine crisis is kind of just like a little skirmish where everyone is starting not to agree anymore. What does that mean for people who held dollars? Are they going to recycle those dollars back into U.S. treasuries anymore? how are the energy flows going to happen? If Russia's not selling its energy to Europe, but it's selling it to China and India or some other people, how is that going to affect things? It's hard to move energy. The pipelines are built from Russia to Europe, not the other way around. And so that's going to lead to dislocations in price. There's not going to be one unified market for oil. There's not going to be one unified market for grains and some of these other key exports from the Eastern European landmass. And so how are these countries going to trade with each other? If you don't want to use a US dollar system, what other system can you use? Can you use gold? Can you use your own currency? Can you use the Bitcoin blockchain technology? I don't know, but I think there's going to be a lot of instability, and it's not going to be this monolithic thing, which was, if you've got dollars, you're good, you can trade with everybody, no issues. Now we've got all these other competing concerns, which essentially drive up the price of everything, and you have structural inflation everywhere because it's not this seamless system that we had from 1946 to probably the late 90s, early 2000s. And so that's, I think, a situation, and it's remains to be determined whether or not Bitcoin is going to be that currency where it's going to allow the global population, who are not the elite political class, to fighting these wars. How are they going to trade with each other and communicate with each other? Is there going to be this other currency that's going to be on a lower level? Maybe it's not the sovereign central banks using Bitcoin or storing it or trading energy for Bitcoin. Maybe it's just the average person wants to protect their wealth against structural inflation or theft by some sort of person or entity based on these wartime scenarios. So I think it's just that instability, and so we can see if Bitcoin can rise to the occasion. It's undetermined.
Can I jump in, John? So
Sure.
you were over in China. So one of the things we saw early on, and we saw this is important, is how we talked about the decentralization of Bitcoin. We talked about, and this is, of course, we got these mining farms and whatnot, and some of this got changed, and then we would hear the threats of China closing up, and then was that really closing? They stayed open for a while, and then like recently they actually did close, and now you got folks in the States saying, yeah, this is going to be our time. Do you see that part of this equation about the decentralization? Is it real? Again, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, so I'm problematic in the space. No, but the Black Blockchain Summit is not. It's open for everybody. Anybody want any type of thing that you want to do, just don't hurt nobody. But for this conversation about what's made it far, I think Bitcoin would have had the same problems as some of these others. I just don't think the alphabet boys got into it early enough. And by the time they got critical mass, you had the Chinese dealing with it. You had so many different, interests involved in it. For it to go down, it would make everybody's thing go down. So it was kind of like, let's kind of keep this floating. But I guess what I'm trying to get to is, do you think, as we look at alternatives to the U.S. dollar and the U.S. hegemony, that's my words, not yours, do you see some of the things we've seen with proof of work and how now who has the biggest mining rigs controlling so much? Do you think that's a factor in how to deal with potential conflicts and alternatives to the current system?
Well, I think the fact that we've had this fear of Chinese miners not existing, then it happening, then the network being completely fine. The hash rate is now above where it was post the ban of mining from China. So I think that I think decentralization is like religion. There's nothing that's perfect, right? It's a spectrum. There will never be 100% perfect decentralization, nor will there be 100% perfect centralization on the other side of the scale. And so as human beings, we live in an imperfect world and we strive for perfection that we'll never achieve. And so I think that's the journey. And so Bitcoin in and of itself has proven, okay, we had this fear. China controls Bitcoin. China, for its own reasons, said, we don't want you guys consuming all this power onshore. Get the fuck out. They left. And then the hash rate went other places. And Bitcoin still exists. Blocks are still mined. Transactions still happen.
All right, let's keep it going, baby. All right, and then he just brought that up about what China said, get out. John, that's a good time to talk about these digital currencies. I mean, these centralized, bank currencies, because China, I think, has theirs. And I know you've talked a lot about that. Arthur, what do you think about folks making fiat digital? How is that?
I think there's I put this out there in a particular essay. I think that now that we have, on the one hand, I think this is a very bad thing for the person, but if I am a government official, I have this devil's pact with the banking system. I need the banking system, but they also fuck up from time to time and cause me issues like the global financial crisis and yada, yada, yada. And the general population has a strong aversion to bankers, but I protect them because I need them to operate the monetary system. With, distributed ledger technology, I actually don't need commercial banks anymore. I being the central bank, can give all my citizens an app and say, hey, why don't you bank with me directly? It's 100% secure because I'm the government. I can print money willy-nilly, whatever. You can send your money back and forth for free because I'm not a profit-making entity. I don't need to make money on you sending transactions like your bank down the street does, right? Because I have other goals in mind. I care about power and control rather than profit. But if I'm the government and now I've basically disintermediated all the banks and put them out of business, I don't need to continually bail them out because they keep fucking up all the time by extending credit when they don't need to, getting involved in all sorts of dodgy accounting stuff. I could nationalize the transmission network of money and do it faster, cheaper, and better than the banking system. Now, obviously, the banks who control the central banks, because usually they're private institutions, apart from the Federal Reserve is a private institution. Member banks are the shareholders. Why would they allow the Fed to essentially take them out of business? Because if they can no longer count on our deposits in their hands to make loans, what are they really doing? They actually have to do their job. They need to go and actually assess real businesses and make a credit determination and be able to assess credit rather than having a government charter and then gambling and then asking for inflation to pay for their losses. And so I think the CDBC or central bank digital currency movement, if I'm a government official, makes a lot of sense. This is what I should be doing. As a private citizen, it's really bad because now I have no more financial privacy. I get that. And then I think what's stopping it in a lot of probably more, Western liberal democratic systems is the fact that the central bank is actually owned by the member banks, who they'd be putting out of business by properly implementing a CDBC. So unless there's some sort of very exigent wartime need to, corral all of the paper money and put it in this digital form of CDBC, I don't see how politically the government is going to be able to essentially put all of its commercial banks out of business by putting this in place, even though the solution for them is better than paper money rolling around or us having a bank account at a, too big to fail bank. Obviously, it's different in China or another country that has a different political structure and different, constituents they need to appeal to. But that's sort of where I come down on this whole, central bank digital currency issue.
It sounds like, John, when you were teaching me in Kenya. So, they had M-Pesa, and John, he was early on in BitPesa. But in the United States, when I was in Africa, a lot of times folks would say, well, the United States is so advanced, that's why they don't have mobile money. And the truth, we said, nah, it's because our politicians are controlled by banks, and they don't want the telcos to have the cash reserves. They want to hold all the cash reserves. They don't want the telcos, like literally pulling out a plastic card with a cassette strip on the back is ridiculous. Like, it's just dumb. But literally somebody's invested in these legacy ATMs and a whole bunch of stuff that they're not willing to let up on. And I live in DC. Like, it's state capture. Like, the people who are making the policies aren't the folks we vote for. They picked them already. They never lose. The banks, I don't care which side of they never lose. They butter the bread on both sides. So the telcos, AT&T and Verizon, are not going to be holding cash reserves like a Vodacom or somebody else in Kenya. And I think in the point you just made is that even a more efficient, effective system puts out a business the folks that literally control the political and finance system. Not for the betterment of the world, but for the betterment of themselves, for however long we choose not to resist. And then when the people rise up, well, I'll stop again. Brother John.
Yeah, that was a good point, Sinclair, because in Kenya, we've been using M-Pesa, which is mobile money, sort of credits on our mobile phone for almost 20 years. So, and that sort of leapfrogged the banks. The banks are forced to work with the telcos, not the other way around. and the benefits for the end consumer because they have the money on the phone. So I think in recent times, I know in the US and to a lesser extent in Africa, we've seen stable coins coming into fore, and a lot of people are beginning to pick up on stable coins. So is that the approach the US is going to take in terms of a CBDC, where they let the corporate interests sort of run with these stable coins rather than creating a Fed coin? What approach do you see happening,
So
there in the West?
obviously they tolerate it because Circle, USDT, Paxos, they have, I don't know what I call it, $100 billion of dollars in the banking system. I don't see what I don't understand is if I'm a large commercial bank, these stable coins are essentially using my pipes that are very expensive because I have to comply with all these reams of banking regulations. Yet, they're allowing people to move money around the world, in 10 seconds, and I don't get a cut of that. So I don't understand why the banks haven't just said no more bank accounts for Circle, Tether and such and such, because if I was a CEO of a bank, I would never let them deposit money in my bank because they're trying to put me out of business. But they're there. And so I think at a certain level, because these entities essentially hold short-term treasuries, and the Fed and the Treasury have voiced this concern. What happens if the combined U.S. dollar stablecoin system? Let's say it's $1 trillion of U.S. public market debt, right? That's probably what China's 2-something trillion, Japan's 1 trillion. That would be what top 3 largest holder of treasuries globally. And for whatever reason, let's say that a bunch of holders of these currencies said, "I need my cash today. Please wire the money back to me." And so what happens? The stablecoin issuers, they go and they say, "Okay, I need to go sell all this debt now." Not like, don't tell me, give it to me in a week, hit the fucking bid. This is supposedly the most liquid market in the world. Give me my dollars back. And that's an issue because if you've read some literature about the microstructure of the U.S. Treasury market since Dodd-Frank and some of these other banking regulations, you'll know that the liquidity has gone down because the banks can't make money holding these large inventories of treasuries. And so this could be bad for the stability of the market if these stablecoin issuers get so large. They obviously hold treasuries to earn a yield, and then they have to handle the redemptions from their holders. And that's the risk that the Fed and the Treasury have highlighted with these stablecoins. And so I think that while they probably won't outright ban any of this stuff, they'll put significant pressure on any bank that lets these things get too large. Now, what's too large? I don't know. But I would say if they're starting to creep up to top 10 holders of treasuries globally of any U.S. institution, like they're another sovereign country, that becomes a market issue because for whatever reason, a bunch of people could want to have their dollars today, and the treasury market can't handle the selling of all those securities at the same time. So I think there's an implicit cap on how large a dollar-based stablecoin can get. And so if there's been some people talking about how the correlation of the amount of dollars in the system to the value of all the other cryptocurrencies in the ecosystem, I think there's an implicit cap on how large they get. There's obviously other ways of doing it, like MakerDAO and some other of these dollar-backed stable coins, but that's a risk that I see to people who think that this is let's extrapolate to infinity in terms of how large this can get. There is a direct market impact that the asset that they hold, which we think is liquid, is actually not that liquid when you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of it.
Yeah, and how about the fact that I think early on we thought in the Bitcoin space at least that we were actually like pirates and we were about to come up with this new system and down with the banks. But looking at some of the legislation lately as a small startup, the amount of regulatory compliance you have to do now in these spaces, even when we talk about stable coins, do you see, and again, this might be, again, I'm an alarmist and an extremist wrapped in two pieces, that these banks will ultimately take this all over. Like they'll let Circle play in a sandbox. Like we always talk about sandboxes so we can kind of like develop our startups. Maybe they're letting Circle get the kinks out, and once they get to a point, the banks just literally take them over. And so when we're talking about stable coin, like even talking stable coins, where you're talking about the physical world and the digital world, like some of these NFT. Anytime I see people talking about how well the distributed ledger works digitally, it's great, but you still need an oracle. If we start saying, like, if people were bringing up Venezuela when they were talking about the petro, they were going to have oil connected to crypto, but they might count the same barrel 5 times. You got to trust somebody then. So then it starts to get weird. Do you see maybe the literal banks themselves might take over some of this system?
I mean, it's a competitive. It's a competitive market, so maybe at some point there will be a bank who says, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to, I was making $100 billion a year in revenue on, global transaction banking. I'm okay to make 20. I'm going to go out there and launch my own thing and try to take over this market. And because I am, insured essentially by the Fed or maybe the ECB or one of these large central banks, I can do it more credibly than Tether or Circle or any other of these private companies who, at the end of the day, still need to bank with me anyways. And so, the profit motive, I think, will drive somebody who's not in the top league table of bulge bracket banks to try it out, and we'll see how it goes.
Yes, sir. I know, good point.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things I've seen with stable coins in Kenya, particularly Tether, is it's beginning to sort of become a hedge against the devaluation of the Kenyan currency, the Kenyan shilling, because of inflation. So is that something that would make the US government or the Fed in particular want to let stablecoins thrive, given the competition they're getting from China?
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the dollar is the reserve currency, and unless you grow your own food and have your own energy, you're going to need dollars to trade. So whether that's stable coins or the U.S. banking system or whatever, you're using them, and then the Fed controls the levers that they believe they control in terms of liquidity conditions. And so I don't really think I don't know, but I wouldn't think that they're thinking about it in that granular of a level. I think the concern that they have is, what do these stablecoin issuers actually hold? They hold treasuries. If they have to sell all at the same time, that impacts the market that I really care about, which is the functioning of this U.S. Treasury market. And then what sort of policies am I going to implement to make sure that thing doesn't happen? And this is all stuff that they've said before of what they're actually concerned about.
All right. Okay. So down to sort of one of the recent articles you've written on the Ethereum merge. I think the merge is about 6 days away. Do you have any updates or sort of what can you tell people in terms of giving them alpha on what to expect from what you can see?
No. You can't do it like that, John. No, he got to do a prediction. No, we're not letting you off. By the time this thing airs, it would have happened. So we're going to have receipts. We're going to have all your receipts. Or if you're the guy we say you are, where's Negro Diamonds? We're going to look into the future. Where we at?
We're 6 days away. It hasn't not happened yet. So I think at the end of the day, this is, what do you call it? It's a no trade zone. Don't do anything. Whatever the position you have it. And so you're stuck with it. And you're just going to see what happens. And I think the merge is going to happen. Whether or not it happens to the success or what we think is success, that's the question. And then what are the actual flows of gas spent versus issuance? How is that going to interplay? And that's where I think we'll see either outperformance or underperformance of ETH. I don't think that there's no buyers who haven't bought already. There's no sellers who haven't sold already. And so I think the market is purely based on what are these flows going to be? Because we've been talking about it for a year, whatever it is.
No, we've been talking about them going for proof of work mistake literally for years. Now I'm tired of acting like this is normal. Like these guys, come on, and then to come up with Solidity, who comes up like in a new industry with a new programming language that got his own bugs? It don't make. I apologize.
Yeah, and so again, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who've been around a long time and they've heard a lot of stories, and we're just like, okay, prove to me that this is going to work. And so they got to prove it. And so we'll see, weeks and months after this happens. But thankfully, to the nature of blockchains, will all be transparent. So we'll see how many ETH are minted, how much are people spending in gas, what's the mismatch there? Is this 90% drop in issuance having the effect that a lot of us think it's going to have? So that's the thing that I'm going to be focused on, and I'll be monitoring just the amount of ETH issued and the amount of ETH, burned by gas fees, and that's really all I care about. I don't care about anything else because I think all the other stuff is based on macro conditions and like U.S. oil liquidity conditions, and there's so much other stuff going along, politically, globally, that is hard to predict. But all I have to focus on, in my mind, for the ETH merge is, what's the supply versus demand dynamic, and how has that changed pre the merge, and that to me will tell me all I need to know.
Hey, John, until somebody forks it, this is gonna be a third way. Like we're not gonna even know. This is gonna probably be another way we didn't even think was gonna happen. But okay, good point.
All right.
I'm sorry, John.
Yeah. So as we sort of bring this to a close, Sinclair and I have been sort of
No. Before you do that, no. Hold on.
Yeah.
No. Are you about to give them the surprise? You doing a surprise?
No.
Okay, go ahead. I apologize.
It's a question on sort of education, and we've been focused on education in the Black space. Do you have any thoughts on how we can do this better? There's a lot of things happening globally, macro. The technology is a bit complicated. So what would you advise in terms of bringing about positive adoption of crypto in sort of Black communities, which are not the minority in the world, but the majority? If you bring in Africa, South America, and how do you bring all these people into the space?
I think at the end of the day, it starts, and this is something that I'm working on, is financial literacy. It kind of almost doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin, because I don't think you can be truly excited about what Bitcoin is or what it can do unless you understand money. What's a US dollar bill? What's this piece of paper, whatever currency you hold in your hand? Why can the government issue it and you can't? Why can't I go to the store and buy something with this currency? Can't I just write on a piece of paper Arthur Hayes token and buy what I want? Why can't I do that? So you can understand.
You can do that with us, bro. All day long. You go inside there, you taking it. There you go, John. We just changed the world. No, go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah. So I think until you understand that and the power of time and compounding interest, then I don't really think you're going to really get. You might be using Bitcoin's going up. Yeah, I'll buy some Bitcoin. Maybe it goes up and maybe make a bit of money, but you're not going to be passionate about it, excited about it, understand how this can be completely earth-shattering in terms of how we organize ourselves financially as a community, unless you understand what it is we're railing against and why it is such a revolutionary thing for a bunch of people to get together over an email listserv and create a form of money that's now worth a few $100 billion, right? And so that, I think, requires education and financial literacy, and unfortunately, it's not taught very much, regardless of the community, Black, white, red, purple, no one understands it, and so then they allow the people that they elect or they support implicitly to spin these fairy tales of how money actually works, and then we don't make any progress as humans in terms of the way we change. So I think it just starts educating kids of what it is that they hold in their pocket. What does this mean from a very theoretical perspective, and understanding that, and then you can get to the excitement about what blockchain and Bitcoin and all this other stuff is.
Now, I think, John, when he just hit, John, real quick, I think what you did, though, is something we don't see. And now it seems like folks are talking about how Black folks are over-indexing in the space, but it's still consumerism. Even when I see this NFT stuff, we're not controlling open seas. We're still like the commodity that's being traded. Maybe there's an illusion of being able to have some set of self-determination in it, but we don't understand the fundamentals of the market, and we don't understand the fundamentals of monetary policy. And I just think what you just said, and it really connects back to something else you said. You talk about how political this was. Oftentimes people talk about our space, they talk about the tech, but the longer I've been in this thing, it's very political. And I left the political space to get back to engineering. But this is it is organizing people. Like when you're talking about organizing people, even if you have a successful startup, you still got to organize. You can build the best mousetrap. They're not going to come to you organize people. So literally, I think what you just said, but what we see now with a lot of these folks teaching, it literally is just teaching us how to consume, a new electronic digital way of consuming, and not having us get our own understanding so we can get to like some level of self-sovereignty so we can actually control it, or at least understand the role we're playing. Like even if you disagree, like at least know what role you're playing. Even if you can't do anything about it. But no, a lot of people don't talk about playing chess. Like, look, you can say, but most of us don't talk about which piece are you on the board. Now, if you're a pawn, you know you ain't gonna make it to the end. All right? Let's be clear. The bishop got a few moves, but no one plays chess for a bishop. Like, who are you on this chessboard? We never have that conversation. And I think the fundamentals, like you just said, what does this piece of paper mean? And why can't I just write my name? I wish there was more conversations on the education that really take us to that core, because we could then reconstruct a new model. But the way we hear it now, they almost start in the middle. There's no first principles to it. It's like in the middle, and and then make sure you buy some Bitcoin, or make sure you buy a dog coin or bubble coin, and that'll help you. Then you're gonna get the wealth gap, and it'll start dropping a couple keywords on you, and you're still back into the same pimp game. Anyway, humbly, I respect that. Anyway, I'm sorry, John. John's the last interruption. Yeah. John, last interruption. But before you give the surprise away, just say, give me a sign or something.
Well, we're actually at the end, so this is the last question I have for you, Arthur, today. So, what is next for you in the crypto space for CryptoHayes?
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying writing, investing, and doing coin stuff, and so I guess take it from there. I have no agenda. I have control of my time, which is nice, and so I've achieved that, and so that's kind of where I want to be. And whatever sort of thing interests me, I'll get involved. I don't have any sort of grand plan or anything like that. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I like speaking, working on education and that kind of thing. But that's where I am.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think it's time for the surprise, Sinclair.
All right, John, go ahead. You make it happen, baby. I'm 100%. You asking the. And well, how can we be helpful to you, bro? Like how, how can we help you? That's what we.
Well, I mean, I guess
we bring
I'm working. I have a public policy director, and we're trying to create a curriculum that we're going to go into. We're going to start in New York State, and probably certain parts of New York City, into low-income schools, and we want to teach this financial literacy and blockchain. And so we're going to have a very comprehensive small course, and we're probably going to need some instructors and people who look like us and have a passion for wanting to educate people. So I'm sure that the woman that I have involved, her name is Akoya, she will be contacting you when we need something, and it's going to probably be your expertise, come into a school for half an hour and talk to some kids, and that'll be my ask.
All right, and then maybe you do like a guest professor at Howard University or one of these HBCUs. All right, no trick questions. All right, John, before I make it wild, go ahead, lay it on, baby.
All right. So at the Black Blockchain Summit, we usually give out awards to people who make huge contributions that align with our thinking or our agenda in terms of driving the adoption of blockchain technology in Black communities and empowering them with the knowledge, such as financial literacy. So our award is called the Moran Award, and Moran is a Maasai warrior. So this is literally the warriors you see in Black Panther, sort of. That's where they got the idea from this community called the Maasai people. And so I have the sort of replica of the award that's on the way with one of my colleagues. And we'd like to say Asante Sana for your huge contribution, for sort of giving us your time. You're a great inspiration to many. Like I mentioned before, my colleagues were very excited that I was going to be speaking to you today. And I'm sure once we have this panel session on the summit. We'll be sharing it around, and we'll be looking forward to assisting you, with your education program, because that's what we do and that's what we're passionate about. So, asante sana, Arthur Hayes.
Thank you, guys. It means a lot.
Woo! And look, so literally, so we'll get with your folks so we can send you. And we also got like this cloth. Who are the folks, brother?
It's a Maasai people.
Yeah, the Maasai people. They got like it looked like, I think the Scottish folks got it from Africa. I know they be stealing from Africa, brother. They got the Scottish cloth because the Messiah looked just like the checkered, that red and black. I'm like, I know that wasn't the lumberjacks. It was definitely the Maasai warriors had that thing for all of them. So we definitely got that for you too, man. We're just so grateful, and brother, we want to stay up with you. We want to make sure. How can our people reach out to the things that you're working on and help you out?
So stay, my Twitter, that's probably where I, communicate the most. So at CryptoHayes is where I release my blog articles and I talk about anything that I'm doing and, tweet random things. So yeah, I would stay up there.
Yeah, that's cryptohayes.medium.com, right?
That's, I don't know the exact domain, but at CryptoHayes is my Twitter handle. And if you go on Medium and you search CryptoHayes, you'll find my Medium page.
All right. All right. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you. Awesome. Thank you, brother Arthur. I appreciate you, John. I know this was awesome. I know it's late over there in Nairobi, but we try to, get you covered on both continents. We got your front and your back. We got your 6 and your 9. You're good. So that being said, thank you for supporting the Black Blockchain Summit. This is our 5th anniversary. You've definitely been a highlight. Next time we'll try to get you in person. We'll break you out, how we're going to do it, but we're going to make sure you, bro, don't let them say, we come up with some rhyme schemes, bro. We did it for James Brown. We just, look, we look, okay. So thank you again. Appreciate you. And everybody, stay tuned for more for Good Brother Hayes. Thank you.
Thank you.